Hello guys, welcome to the C++ tutorial series. In this video, we will learn about conditional statements in C++. My name is Kafui and welcome to my channel mods.dev. Please subscribe and like to help the channel grow and turn on the bell notification icon to get notified whenever I release a content on the channel. With that said, let's dive in. Statements are pieces of code that perform an action, and in this video, we'll look at the if statement. Now, the if statement is used when you want to perform an action based on a condition. So let me just initialize a variable, say using is happy, and set it to true. So I just initialize a boolean variable and setting it to what? True. So I can use the if statement. I'll say if is happy, then just output a string to the console saying what? The user is happy, and save. So when I run my code with shift plus F10, we get the user is happy printed out in the console. So what this is doing is that this condition or this piece of code will only be executed if the condition we put in the parentheses is true. So in the parentheses, this is where we put our condition that we want to analyze. So in case I change the value for this condition to false, our code will not get executed, and when I run that, what do we get? We don't get anything in the console. So this is how we can use the if statement. Now, in case we want to write an if statement with multiple code or with multiple logic, we can say if, and then let's say is happy, then we use what? Curly braces, and over here in the curly braces we have created a block of scope, a block scope. We can put our logic over there. So I'll just output std cout user is happy, user, just cout, say user that is satisfied. So what we are saying is, let me just change this to true. So what this code is saying is, if this condition is true, output or perform or execute all the code in this block. So when I run my code, we get what? User is happy and then user is satisfied. So I can just output this on the second line, and when I run my code again, we get user is happy and then user is satisfied. So in case you want to perform multiple logics or execute a lot of code in this if condition, we put what? It in what? This curly braces or this block scope. Now the next statement we'll look at is the if else statement. Now the if else statement is used to perform a condition if the condition is true, or perform execute a piece of code if the condition is true, or execute a piece of code if the condition is what? False. So I'll say if, and the syntax goes like this: if, then we put our condition. Now I'll use the is happy. So in the block here, I'll say std cout user is happy, and terminate it. Then just at the end of the if statement, we bring what? The else. And in the else statement, I'll just std cout and say user is sad, and terminate it. So when I go ahead and save my code, now what this code is saying is what? When the condition is true, or if the condition is true, checking this condition over here is true, this block of code will be executed. Else, if the condition is false, this block of code will be what? Executed. So right now our condition is set to what? True. So when I go ahead and run my code, we get user is happy. When I change the condition to false, and I run my code, we get user is sad. So this is how we can use the if else statement in C++. The next statement we'll look at is the statement that involves using the logical operators. So in C++, we have two logical operators, or we have the AND logical operators and then the OR logical operators. So I'll just go ahead and initialize two variables, say bool A, and set it to true. And then I'll say the boolean B and set it to what? False. Now we can using the if statement, we can check two or multiple conditions using these logical operators. So I'll go ahead and say if A, and then the AND logical operators is what? Double ampersand symbol, and then B. Then I'll put my condition over here, std cout. I'll just put a random text literal over here, string literal over here. The condition is true, and then terminate it. And then I'll say else std cout, the condition is false, and then terminate that. Let me write condition properly. So, and then when I save and run my code, what do we get? We get the condition is what? False. So it means what the AND operator will do is it will take these two conditions and compare them. So true and false will result to what? False when we are using the AND condition logical operator. In case I change this one to true, it means the condition in our if statement will be run. So when I run it or execute it, we get the condition is true. When I change the first one to false, the first condition to false, and then I run it, we get the condition is false. So the AND operator, what it does is it returns the first, when the two conditions are true, it returns the code, or it executes the code in the if statement. But if one of the condition or any of the condition is false, it returns the code in the else statement. The next logical operator we'll look at is the OR operator, or logical operator. The OR logical operator is just the double pipe symbol. So the double pipe symbol is the OR logical operator. And when we run this code, let's see what we get. We get the condition is true. It will take these two conditions and compare them. So what the OR logical operator does is it takes the two conditions and compares them and returns the condition that is true if one of them is true. But if both is true, it will return what? The first condition, and we get, when I do that, we get the condition is true. If any of them is false, it just returns the first true condition. So the condition is true. So this is how the and then or logical operators work in C++. The next operator we'll talk about is the negation operator. And then we use the negation operator to what? Negate a condition. So I can say if, and then the negation operator is the exclamation symbol. Then you put it, or you prepend it with what? The variable you want to negate. So I can negate A, and then let's say std cout the condition is true, and then terminate it. So when you negate this operator, it will take the value of the variable and then return the negation of it. So if the value is true, it will return false. If it is false, it will return what? True. So since A is true, the negation operator will negate it, and then therefore A will now be false. So our code will not run. So when I execute our code, we don't get anything outputted in the console. But when I change it to B, since B is falsy, it will change it to true, and then when I run our code gets executed, and then we get the condition is true outputted in the console. So the next thing we'll look at is the comparison operator. The comparison operators are these operators. So let me just go ahead over here. So The comparison operators are the double equal to sign. You have the less than, the greater than, the less than or equal to, and then the greater than or equal to. We can use these operators to compare values. So I can initialize a variable, say int x equals what? 100. Then using my if statement, if x is equal to double equal to 100, std cout the value is the same. Then I terminate it, and when I run my code, we get what? Let me just comment this one out and then run it again. Let's see. We don't get anything outputted in the console. It's because it is, instead of 100 I wrote 10. So let me just do it again and then run it. So it means our code is working. Good. Now we get the value is what? The same. One thing you should put in mind is that anything we put in the parentheses over here, or any condition we put in the parentheses over here, is always being evaluated to either true or false before the code is being executed. So we should always make sure that the condition we put in the parentheses is evaluated to true or false. So I can say if it's greater or equal to, our code will run, or less or equal to, it means our code will still run. So this is how we can use what? The comparison operators in C++. The last statement we'll talk about in this video is the switch statement. Now, the switch statement is similar to having multiple if statements. So mind you, we can have multiple if statements in to write or to determine a condition, but we can use the switch statement as well. So what the switch statement does is it checks the value of the condition based on the given value, and it executes the code inside a given set of case labels. If none of the statement is equal to the condition, the code inside the label is inside the default label is executed. So let me just demonstrate the syntax for you. Let me initialize a variable, let's say y, and initialize it to 3. So we use the syntax switch. So the switch keyword is C++, and when I write that, then I shouldn't use the auto completion, so let me write that manually. So we use the switch, then in parentheses we put our condition over here. So I want to check this condition, this variable y, so I put my y over there, and then in curly braces we put our cases over there. They are cases, so you write case. So case 1, so it means I'm going to compare the value of this condition to 1, and then I'll bring a colon. Then in that block I can put what? A logic over there, or my logic of code over here. So I'll just std cout and say the value is equal to 1, and then terminate it. And then at the end of that I'll bring the break statement. So I'll explain why we have to write the break statement later on. So another case, I'll just go ahead and define another case. I'll say case 2, comparing this. So I'll just copy this output over here and say the value is equal to 2, and then finally break out of this case. Then let me just copy this down again and change the value here to 3, and then change here to 3, and then break. And then finally we have to bring our default statement, and I'll just std cout, and then what I'll put there is the value doesn't exist. The value does not exist, then terminate that. And finally I have to bring my break statement. Good. Now what we've just did is what we call the switch statement, and then in the switch statement we can use cases to case labels to test multiple conditions. So over here, I initialize a variable with the value 3, and then I'm testing the condition. So in the first case, I'm saying if the value is equal to 1, it should output this block of code. So we can have multiple lines of code here to be executed. And then we terminate each case with what? The break keyword. So the break keyword will break out of the switch statement if the condition is true. So if we don't put in the break keyword, we have what we call what? For true. So the condition will execute. Let me just remove this. The condition will execute from that that condition that has been evaluated to the end. So I will demonstrate that for you. Let's just do this. When I do this, we get the value is equal to 3. When I change this one to 1 and run my code, we get the value is equal to what? 1. So the rest of the statements are, the case statements are what? Ignored, because it will break out of this. So when I just remove the break statement over here and then I save, you see that we have what we call what? A for true. So this condition will be evaluated, this condition will be over evaluated until we get to what? A break statement, and then the code will exit out of what? The switch statement. So when I run my code, we will get the value is equal to 1, and then the value is equal to 2 printed out in our console. So when I do this and run it, so we get the value is equal to 1, the value is equal to 2 in our console. So I can just denote this and just say print it on the next line. When I run it, we get the value is equal to 1, the value is equal to 2. But that's not what we want. So we should always make sure that we terminate it with what? The break keyword, or we use the return keyword. We can return this value directly from what? Our console. Or the best approach is to what? Use the break keyword to break or exit out of what? This switch statement when the condition is what? True. Now let's talk about the default statement here in the switch statement. Now the code in the default statement will only be executed if none of the conditions in the case statement has been matched. So let's say I change the value over here to 100. So since none of the conditions over here in the case statement will be matched, the code in the default statement will be what? Executed. So when I go ahead and then run my code, we get the result. The value does not exist outputted in the console. So that is it about the switch statement in C++. And that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.